So, someone said to me this week, someone's doorway to heaven is another person's highway to hell. And someone's highway to hell is another person's doorway to heaven. In Unity, we teach that heaven and hell are states of consciousness. But that's not a universal teaching. That's not a teaching that a lot of people embrace. There are folks, a lot of folks, that teach that hell is a place you go to, and some of those folks have a lot of interest in not just describing that place, but more telling you about how you're going to get there. And some of those ways could be, if you dance, if you drink coffee, if you've been divorced, if you love the same gender. There's a lot of different paths to hell, aren't there? Life is a spiritual journey. In Unity, we teach that you can create a living hell or a living heaven right here. And that in fact, what some people think is a path to hell, which by the way can include doing yoga and meditation, that idea that is a path to sin and damnation, can in actuality and spiritual practice be the path to heaven, awakening, and enlightenment. So if anyone's ever told you you're going to hell, maybe you're going to heaven. I don't know if I turned that off. Carl, you might have to come up and turn off your bike. So, if you're scared already, it's okay. I hope you come back next month for World Day of Prayer Month. It might be in your comfort zone. But in Unity, we are on a mission to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And it's high time, is it not, that we talk about this consciousness of hell, and we talk about this idea of judging each other for how we live life in this spiritual and human condition, for how we live it, how we navigate it in all of its grace and all of its messiness. Who in here, in fact, would you stand if you haven't ever made what you felt like was a mistake? Stand if you haven't ever felt like life is messy. Okay, and now stand if you have the manual that came out with you the day you were born. That manual is written on our hearts, is it not? It is the sacred scripture that cannot be questioned, that is available to each one of us, that is written on our innermost sanctuary. It's high time that we hold a loving consciousness. And this consciousness includes not even criticizing people that say you're going to hell. In fact, you could instead just write a song about enjoying the ride there and meeting your friends there, doing a little yoga there maybe. Father Richard Rohr talks about a toxic image of God when he says this: threat of hellfire works because it appeals to the lowest level of consciousness where we all start. Your image of God creates you. That is why it's so important to see God as loving and benevolent, and why good theology is still important. Much of Christian history, he says, has manifested a very different God than the one Jesus revealed and represented. Jesus tells us to love our enemies, but this cultural God sure doesn't. Jesus tells us to forgive 70 times 7, but this God doesn't. Instead, this God burns people for all eternity. Many of us were raised to believe this, but we usually had to repress this bad theology into our unconsciousness because it's literally unthinkable. Most humans are more loving and forgiving than such a God. We've developed an unworkable and toxic image of God that a healthy person would never trust. The mystical, transformative journey cannot take place until that image is undone. And we, friends, are here to unravel it. So, what is that image of God? That image of God is a parental figure, and that image of hell is a place you go to rather than a state of consciousness. But we know in truth God is love. God is that binding and connecting force, available, accessible everywhere in all beings. That notion that we are born blessed and that we are emanations, in fact, inlets and outlets, that there are no separations anywhere in life. But this toxic image of God, even in the Bible, tells us that women are possessions and property. And in practice, in our world, it tells a mother sometimes to abandon their son or daughter if they're gay, trans, if they have other habits or patterns in their life that don't fit the image that was downloaded to that parent. Do we believe in the consciousness of our source that has more love than that? I believe we do. And when we are taught not to trust our own intuition, we can actually create a living hell when we have the full intention to be holy and create heaven. Out of the full intention to be good, even God-fearing people, we can perpetuate a consciousness that is unlike that of the master teacher who preached and taught love, who in fact was so radical with love that people couldn't handle it. They had to crucify that message. They had to cross out that story. I tend to think that if Jesus was walking in on Palm Sunday now, that instead of all the palm fronds, there might be a bunch of bikers with motorcycles. There'd be a diversity of people there saying, thank you for this message of inclusion, of love, of awakening, of knowing that I and the Father are one. I and my source are one, and that in fact we're born blessed, not born in sin. That sin is simply the idea of missing the mark. It's an old archery term, right? For missing the mark, it means just, let's try again. That wasn't right on spot. And hell refers to a place called Gehenna where they took the trash. It was like the major recycling dump where they burned the stuff. So yeah, go to hell. Let go of some things that are no longer serving the highest consciousness. Let go of some things that are no longer serving the highest good. And recycle, recycle, recycle. But it's not something that scars you. It's not something that puts a badge on you. It's not something that sends you to an eternal place of damnation. Can we let go of the image of a God that is less forgiving than a mother? It's high time we do. Anytime we let go of religious teaching, of dogma, and of someone else's version of spirituality or God, we open ourselves to an experience of our source, to an experience of God. And an experience can never be taken away. There was a video that I was just watching, and it had, believe it or not, John Fugelsang, who was just in the film that we played on Friday night, and John Shelby Spong and Bill Maher. It was an old version of Politically Incorrect. And in that version, Spong was responding to another panelist who was on there who was talking about his Christian faith and his life stance. And Spong, right after he shared an experience of healing, he said, that's a personal witnessing. I wouldn't, take away anyone's personal witnessing, but he says this in response. He says, I don't ever want to stand in judgment upon anyone else's witnessing experience, the experience of God, not the dogma, the experience of God, not the teaching, the experience of God. But I can only say that God for me is so much bigger than my faith, my church, my world, my understanding of life, and I think I walk into the mystery of God every day. But God forbid I spend time telling people what God is like. God forbid I spend time telling people what God is like. I don't believe there is a soul that knows what God is like. I only know what I experience, and I cannot universalize from that. I only know what I experience, and I cannot universalize from that. He goes on, Spong, in another talk, to say that religion is in the control business. He said religion is, and has always been, in the control business, and that's something people don't really understand. It's in the guilt-producing control business. And if you have heaven as a place you're rewarded for your goodness and hell as a place where you're punished for your evil, then you sort of have control over the population. So they create this fiery place that has quite literally scared the hell out of people throughout Christianity. And it's part of a control tactic. He says the church doesn't like people to grow up because you can't control grown-ups. Religion has been known to demonize people throughout time. The traditional church has told people if you're wild and free, if you dance, you're going to hell. If people embrace their own nature, explore on their own, listen to their own spiritual journey, think freely, go at their own pace, blaze a new trail, they're bound for hell. They've paid the ticket to Satan, and they're ready to ride. As if others know the truth about our spiritual journey. Bill Maher kept saying in that video, he's like, every time I think, I know something, he's like, I always stop at 99%. I'm 99% sure of this. I'm 99% sure of that. Rather than I know everything for sure, for sure, for sure. I believe we're born to be wild. I believe that we are truly nature's child. I believe that we're here to fly high and to break boundaries. I believe that we're here to go beyond what has ever been done before. I believe that we're here to walk in the path of the way shower, Jesus the Christ, and the spiritual masters and teachers throughout the ages. I believe that all of us, no matter what it looks like and no matter where we are in our spiritual journey, is actually on the highway to heaven. I believe that no matter what is going on and no matter where we are, this infinite universe of love, intelligence, and wisdom, no matter how long it takes, will keep giving us the lessons, the messages, even if they feel like and look like hell. They will give us the messages and the lessons that will lead to our emancipation and our awakening, that when we finally surrender to them, we will realize there is only love, that behind all things, it all folds into love, because we are of love. And I believe that we're here to be spiritually mature and spiritually awake individuals, that we're here to actually be grown-ups. And that this spiritual path is about taking that on. And yes, that is scary, because one of the scariest things anyone ever said to me one Sunday after service in Jersey was, Reverend Erin, I hope you got it right, because we're all going to wherever you're going. That's when I started saying, like, nearly in every service I need to say, measure everything against your own heart. Measure everything against your own heart. Can we allow space for our humanity? Can we allow space for our humanity? Would you look at a child that is born onto this planet and think anything less than benevolent thoughts of love as they navigate this incredible, mystical, spiritual, raw, wild journey of uncovering the beauty of their being and the beauty of life, even in the midst of knowing all that will unfold, that will challenge them, that will bring them to the edge, and that may bring them to the bottom. Did you know that quote, if you're laying on the ground, it's not really the quote, someone could remember it better than me, but if you're on the ground, like, look up and see the stars. Even from the bottom, you can look up and see the stars. John Shelby Spong says that you and I are emerging people, not fallen people. You and I are emerging people. Our problem is not that we are born in sin. Our problem is we do not yet know how to achieve being fully human. The function, he says, of the Christ is not to rescue the sinners, but to empower you and to call you to be more deeply and fully human than you ever realized there was the potential within you to be. Maybe salvation needs to be conveyed in terms of enhancing your humanity rather than rescuing you from it. I'm going to say that again. Maybe salvation needs to be conveyed in terms of enhancing your humanity rather than rescuing you from it. Life is a startling and wondrous experience, and eventually I think we're going to discover that God is unfolding through the life of our consciousness and our subconsciousness. Thank you, John Shelby Spong. So until we take the judgment and the shame out of our spiritual practice and out of our hearts, we can't fully be present to our own spiritual awakening, and we can't fully make the space for the spiritual awakening and the absolute love that we can give to those around us. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all things will be added unto you. That seek ye first the peace of mind. Seek ye first the love in your heart. Seek ye first wisdom, intelligence, life, divinity. Our spiritual practice is about each one of us. This is about you and your source. This is about you and the highest truth that you can hear through the treetops and the rivers and the mountains, the waters, the moon, the sun, the eclipse, at the depth of your heart and at the center of your soul. We're not here to take on anyone else's judgments or anyone else's ideas about heaven or hell. We are living our own lives all connected in this infinite source we call God. And it's a wild ride. And by wild, I mean it's full of wisdom, intelligence, love, and divinity. W-I-L-D, wisdom, intelligence, love, and divinity. So if we were born to be wild, is there really a highway to heaven or a highway to hell? Mother Teresa had this version of this writing on her wall. It might have possibly, by some sources, even have been found in her room, on the wall in her room, but definitely in her home where she was with the children of Calcutta in India. And it's a rewrite from a version from Dr. Kent Keith. But this is the version found in Mother Teresa's home in Calcutta. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find sincerity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have. It will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it's between you and God. It was never about them anyway. Namaste.